What I love most about graphic design is that there are so many different things you can do with it, and so many different careers that one person can have. That is awesome, but it can also be really overwhelming to even know what's possible. And there could be some really cool fields that might be a great fit for you that you don't even know exist. So today I'm going to go through 20 design niches and give you really tangible tips of what you can do with them and show you some people that are kind of killing it in that field so you have some examples of what it could look like. First off, there's niching by audience and niching by skill set. Niching by audience would be like a brand designer who only designs for sports teams. People think brand designer is one big thing, but the more that you can narrow down by either style or subculture or location, the more you can make really any of these niches way more specific and really stand out in a giant sea of other designers. So this is going to be a list of skill set niches, but you could take most of them further by offering these services to a specific set of people. So you could be a book cover designer who works with indie authors who are self-publishing, for example. This is a big, giant list, and I didn't just want to give overall ideas of some industries, but also some really specific examples of people who are doing really well in those fields, so you had some specific references that you could research, or maybe even know who to reach out to that you might want to get hired by. There is way more than I could fit into this video, so I put it all together in a little free PDF. I go into more detail for each niche, and I list companies and freelancers who are doing well in that space, so you can kind of do your own research. It's totally free, it's on my website if you want to grab it, so you can do more of a deep dive and follow along with me. For each of these niches, you can kind of go down 2 different paths. Watch this video where I break down the 4 different career paths within the design field. I give really specific advice on what learning you'll need to do and next steps for each of them. But when it comes to niches, they kind of fall into 2 main goals. One is to get hired. So you could work for a studio or an agency that is within this design niche. You could find a company that has a lot of work within this niche and be an in-house designer in that field. Or you could pitch your freelance work to a larger company or agency who needs some of that niche work done. So you could be a motion graphics designer who works with an advertising agency. They don't have enough work to hire someone on full-time for that role, but they often have jobs that have motion work, so you could work with them, for example. The second bucket is to get work. You could be a freelancer who really niches down into one little area and offers a really specific set of services to a really specific client. You could use this to customize your listings on a huge freelance marketplace like Upwork, so you only do packaging design for wellness brands, and it helps narrow down in this giant sea of other designers. Or you could create products or assets within this niche. So instead of offering services, you're creating the end thing and either selling it or licensing it or whatever. All right, that's all the meta level stuff. Let's get into it. So the most obvious design niche is branding. I think this is the go-to when people think about graphic design. It's also the thing that I love doing, and I think it's an entry point for a lot of people within design. This can obviously go way beyond logo design into creating all of the different assets for a company that they need to be able to represent themselves physically and online. I go into way more about this in other videos, so I'm going to jump on. So to get hired, you could work for a large agency, you could work for a medium sort of boutique agency that offers niche services, or you could work for a small studio that's usually an independent designer that's opening up and taking on a few more people. And to get work, obviously, you can go freelance and offer your services directly to businesses or organizations. Next is packaging. Beyond an overall brand design, a lot of industries need a much more intensive packaging design for products and labels, and it can actually be pretty technical. You need to work with dye lines and templates and different tech specs, and be able to interact with printers that have really specific needs. This is a whole industry in itself, and especially in the food and beauty industries, you can really niche down and only do packaging. If you're a really tactile person who loves print and systems and consumer psychology, this could be a great fit. There are a lot of design agencies who specifically specialize in packaging, especially for the food industry. And there are consumer good brands who have so much work in this field that they hire in-house packaging designers. And if you want to freelance, you can go after small businesses that are creating a lot of products or e-commerce and really focus on packaging. That's rad. Next up is motion graphics. This can look like explainer videos and social ads and UI transitions, but it can also be the title sequences for every movie you've ever watched. It can really go in a ton of different directions, and if you love working in motion, there are so many different spaces that you can go in. You can get hired in a creative motion studio, or an advertising agency, or post-production houses in the movie industry. And to get work, you can tailor your freelance for small companies that need motion graphics for social media and stuff, or you can work with larger agencies and offer motion graphic services as an add-on. In a related field, there's video production and editing. This is a giant beast, and as long as there is content on the internet, the world will need video editors. You could even niche down further and get into sound design or color grading. There's so much in the world of video if that interests you. You can be an in-house video producer for a company or a film studio, or you can work with an agency where you're doing a lot of video editing work. Or you could be a freelance video editor working with small businesses or YouTube creators. And if you are one, please let me know because I desperately need one. Next up is one of my favorite niches that not many people think of, and that's the world of surface pattern design. So many of the goods that we buy or interact with were first created by a graphic designer or an illustrator who made a pattern and licensed it to a company. And that is such a whole world that has so many possibilities within it. You can be an in-house designer for a fashion house or a fabric studio or a home decor brand that's making a lot of different wallpaper or textiles on a regular basis. Or you can be a freelance pattern designer that licenses their work. You can directly send your work to companies, or you can work with an agent that will represent you. The other option is that you create your own merch company or print-on-demand storefront and sell your own designs directly to customers. If you love making patterns, there's so much you can do with them. Next is one of my favorite fields, which is typography design. The world needs fonts. This can mean making full typefaces, tweaking display type, or building out brand identities built around custom typography. You can get hired by a type foundry and make type design your entire living. Or you can freelance as a type designer and sell your fonts through a marketplace or your own website directly to designers and other people. And you can customize type for branding, which is a whole skill set that is a real niche within the brand industry. The next is the field of illustration, which I'm defining as anything that uses drawing to convey an idea. So you could get signed on with a larger illustration agency and work on editorial or commercial briefs. You could work at a publishing house and be an in-house illustrator for children's books and other book designs, which is kind of a dream. Or you could be a freelance illustrator. There are so many great examples of illustrators who've been able to create their own style, but then make a lot of different work with it. You can do illustration for branding and editorial work. You can make packaging and merch design with illustration. You can obviously do book cover design or illustrate children's books. You can sell prints and products with your stuff on it. You can take commissions. You can license your work for larger companies. Or you can do a smattering of all of those things and all fit that into being a freelance illustrator. That could be really rad. If you love illustration, there are so many different things you can do with it, and it all hinges on creating your own unique style, which doesn't always happen in other fields in design, so that could be really cool. The next is music production design, and that can include all of the things within the field of the music industry. So creating brand identities for musicians, an individual album, or their tour, that's a whole field. So is creating album art, tour posters, merchandise, t-shirts, all of the stuff that goes along with the sale of music. So you can get hired by an agency that specializes in music work, and there are a few big ones that are kind of coveted positions. You could work in-house at a record label, so you're creating work for their signed artists, which is an even crazier little subculture. Or you could be an independent freelancer who's really tailored their portfolio to target the music industry. Kel Lauren is a great example of someone who's really narrowed in on the music industry and gone from working in a merch agency to being on their own and really creating a name for themselves in this space. So it is possible to follow that pipeline and be independent in this space if you really work at niching out. The next huge niche is web design. The world needs beautiful, usable websites and user interfaces. This is part aesthetic and part problem solving. You could focus on the front end of creating the visual design and wireframing and then handing that over to a programmer or developer. You could be the programmer or developer that gets really into the back end of creating more complicated web protocols, or you could be a combo of the two. So you could get hired by a digital product company, an SaaS brand, or a creative tech studio, Or you could freelance for small businesses or creators or e-commerce sites that need websites. A great way to do this if you want to only do web design is to partner up with brand designers who don't want to do web design and create a packaged set of services so that you guys work together to leverage both of your skill sets. If you only want to build Shopify sites for small e-commerce companies, there is a niche for that. Next is information design, infographics, and the world of data visualization. It is an art form to turn complex information into really visually clear, beautiful graphics. Being able to help someone understand complicated ideas or number sets in a really visually clear way is a beautiful skill set and something that not everyone loves to do. This is great if you love organization or storytelling and getting into research. So you could get hired by news organizations or nonprofits or policy institutes that have a lot of data that they need to bring out often. Or you could freelance for companies making infographics or reports or toolkits or educational content. I have a friend who's made an entire career out of just making annual reports for large companies. It's something that they have to make every year, and so they stay really busy just focusing on that one product. You can also create products from infographics or data visualization and sell them. There's some really cool companies that make really neat stuff just taking information and making it visual. That could be a whole field. The next is environmental or experiential design. This is another field that I don't think people think about. But every building you go into has to have wayfinding, and that has to have been designed by someone. If you go to an event or walk into a museum exhibit, those giant graphics were designed by someone. And someone has to think about the experience that someone has in physical space and how all of those giant graphics and things work together. So you can get hired at a studio that does event design or that does wayfinding. One of my favorite professors in college has had a studio for over 30 years in New York, where all he does is build out the wayfinding systems in giant corporate offices and big organizations. That's actually a huge need. And obviously you can focus your freelance work on storefronts and restaurants and events that need a lot of branded graphics and signage. Taking that one step further, the next niche is integrated branding and interior design. This focuses on combining all of the graphic design needs and the interior design physical needs of a local business. Anything with a physical space, like restaurants and boutiques, offices, hotels, anything in the hospitality industry needs both of those services. So there are boutique agencies that offer combined services to create one kind of package combo that works with those companies as they're starting and helps to create their overall look and feel all the way from the digital space into the physical. If you love thinking about how design can also exist in real life, this could be a really cool space for you. So you could work for a boutique studio that focuses in this space. You could also work in-house at a hospitality group. There's a lot of things that pop up when you're in a hotel chain or a restaurant group, for example, and they have in-house designers. Or you could freelance and offer specialized services to local businesses. Anything you can do to localize your offerings and work within your specific community is really a leg up because people in your space want to work with someone who understands their location. You can be on site and help them build out their store or create their laundromat with their own graphics. It can really be in a lot of different fields or industries, but you can niche by location. That could be really cool. Next is typographic illustration. This is different than typography design because it's really about creating the illustrative letter forms that can go in a lot of different spaces. This could be making giant murals or doing editorial illustration that shows up in magazines a lot. This also shows up in a ton of packaging and also things like movie titles, for example. There's a lot of different places you can take this if you love hand lettering and typographic illustration. You can work as an in-house designer with a specialty. You can work at a studio that focuses on illustration work. Or you can be a freelance lettering artist, or be a muralist, and that is all you do. That's a whole industry. Commercial spaces, events, restaurants, public art installations. There's so many things you can do and just focus on giant murals and typographic illustration. Next up is the world of user experience. That's UI, UX, app design, all of these things kind of bundled together. Roughly speaking, UX is more about understanding the user journey and the psychology of the user experience, while UI is more about creating the visual interface and usability. Both of those sides can be their own thing, or they can go together depending on what you do. You can be an in-house product designer for any number of tech companies that need a lot of UI design. One of my best friends is a UX designer for the US government. She works on the team that creates all of the .gov websites and tries to make the user experience less sucky for people. So there's a lot of things you can do for a company. And obviously there are agencies that specialize in UX and UI design. So if you want to be in a creative space, there's a lot of room for you here. And then you can work independently and offer app design for small businesses. This could really be a blue ocean space if you want to specialize in creating apps for small businesses and make it really easy for them to take their product into a mobile space. There could really be room here. There are also really cool programs like General Assembly that help teach you UX skills. So if the whole idea feels a little overwhelming, if you want to add this on to other things you do as a freelancer, you can learn this skill set and make yourself really valuable. Next is the world of social media, brand management, and content creation. Obviously, in the world we live in, there is an endless need for digital design in these spaces. That could be more on the visual side of creating social media templates or digital marketing campaigns for small businesses. But it could also be on the more strategy side where you're working with companies to create their whole digital ecosystem and their content strategy. You could work in-house for a brand. Larger content creators also hire in-house social media managers. So that is a whole in-house space you could be in. There are also small boutique social media agencies that are hiring designers to do this work for them. So you could work in an agency that is working with small creators. Or you could tailor your freelance offerings to small businesses, influencers, and creators. You could create a suite of offerings that solve a lot of problems for people and be their kind of go-to person in this whole space. If you love working in social media, you can really address a lot of these needs for someone, and this could be a really viable business. Next is the world of publishing. This means book cover design, but also typesetting and layout design, which is a whole other beast. Every book you read was laid out by someone, and there's actually a lot more technical skill that goes along to that process than you might think. So you could be hired as an in-house designer at a publishing house. You could work for a boutique studio that does book cover design. There's actually quite a few of them, and it's a really cool space. Or you could be a freelance book cover designer. Specifically, if you want to offer your services to small independent artists, getting your book designed is actually an endless problem for indie authors because they're not working with a larger publishing studio. So you could really create a niche even within a specific genre and make a whole name for yourself. The beauty of this as a freelance niche is that indie authors are also online hustling and trying to build their own brand, so you can find them easily in those spaces and offer services that really hit a lot of their pain points. This could be a really cool niche. Similarly, there's editorial and layout design. This is anything that fits under the umbrella of long-form content design. Magazines, books, reports, zines, anything that involves multi-page layouts and a lot of InDesign is really in this field. So you could work in-house at a media company, a magazine, or a publishing house, doing a lot of editorial and layout design. Every magazine has to be set by someone. Or you could freelance for indie publications, nonprofits, or brands that have a big storytelling arm. You could decide that you want to focus only on print design and create packages for small businesses where you handle all of their print needs. That's brochures, manuals, trade show graphics, annual reports, infographics, product catalogs, employee manuals. Some companies have a lot of print needs, and you could really specialize in doing a lot of that larger work. Next, there's design strategy and creative direction. This is a little bit different than branding because it involves the larger research, brand positioning, competitor analysis, storytelling, and messaging of a company. You can combine those two and offer strategy services as part of your branding package. That's what I do. But this is actually a rabbit hole that can go pretty deep if you really want to focus on just brand strategy. You can work with a brand consultancy that does very high-level market research and sort of brand reporting for larger companies to help them with their strategic direction. That's a whole field. For several years, I collaborated with a friend of mine who's a fantastic brand strategist. She focuses on making strategy for female entrepreneurs who are doing a lot of content. I offered branding services, and we created a really cool combo package where we worked with women to create a full strategic brand that did a lot of content development for them. So there's a lot of packaging that you can do if that's the niche that you want to go down. Next, you can design for social impact. There's a whole space that is built around storytelling and impact-driven design for nonprofits and social enterprises and advocacy groups. There's actually a lot of need for political campaigns and activist groups and social enterprises to create content around their mission. If you want to focus your design on things that you care about, you can really narrow in on this field. You can work for a social impact studio or a nonprofit communications team that's making a lot of story content, or you can freelance for social enterprises and ethical businesses that need a lot of story-driven content. You can create examples of the kind of work that you can do for them, and then pitch those services to companies that might not even know what they need. Finally, there's what I'm calling creative entrepreneurship and product design. This is where you use your design skills to create your own thing. This could mean that you run your own product-based business, or license your work, anything that involves creating something and then selling it to end consumers. Or it could mean creating assets, templates, graphics, an app, anything that becomes useful to other designers and people in the creative industry rather than selling it to an end user. So maybe you create digital assets or fonts that you sell on something like Creative Marketplace, or you make templates for a specific web builder that people can buy to build their website. Or even better, if you identify a particular need that other designers or creatives have, you can create an app or a service that addresses that need and then sell that thing. Something I've seen recently is the Color Palette Studio that did just that. They identified that choosing color palettes, specifically ones that are accessible and high contrast, is one of the biggest problems that designers run into, and they created a tool set to make it really easy for you to make accessible color palettes. And then they sell that thing. That's something that you can do within the design field. Anything that you have a particular interest in that you think could be useful to other people, you can make that thing and sell it. So that was my giant fire hose of 20 different niches within the design space. There are actually a few more kind of lurking in different corners, so if there's some that I didn't mention that you think of, let me know and I'd love to do a follow-up. And if you want a little bit more practical advice about what to do next if you want to go in one of these fields, watch this video because I give a lot of tangible next steps for the kind of learning and the kind of portfolios that you need to build if you want to go into the different careers. See you there.